Hey, welcome back to the Six Steel City Rings podcast. My name is Ray Whiting. I can't talk today. And with me, I have Ms. Leanne Loman and Mr. Bob Quinn, both senior staff writers for the Steeler Nation. Guys, how you all doing?
Good. How
Great.
are you?
I'm hanging there. I'm on the mend right now. I'm getting better. I'm looking at probably a 3 week time frame to get back on my feet. But all is well. All is well.
Good.
Guys, we are 3 weeks away from the draft.
Woo.
And the draft to me, the NFL draft is like Christmas Day to me. I just can't wait. And right now, as mentioned before, the Steelers and GM Omar Khan, he is um, full speed ahead as far as big free agent signings. And now things have kind of cooled off, and we're looking at the draft. But right now, we are going to talk about the opponents in the AFC North division. We're going to talk about that a little bit, as well as our top, our most feared defensive players in Steelers history. So we're going to talk about that. But first, we're going to go to our opponents. And we're going to go in alphabetical order, starting with the Bengals. The
Or
Cincinnati Bengals.
Bungles, as they're affectionately known.
Well, they have graduated from that stage, so I'm gonna call them the Bengals. I'm gonna be respectful. But I know when game time comes, I call them the Bungles, just because of who they are. But I'm gonna be nice now. So, guys, one thing in particular, as far as with the Cincinnati Bengals, free agent Tyler Boyd, he's been on the fence as far as wanting to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have made a stern offer for him, and they're not budging off that. One other issue is with the Bengals. I want you all to tell me, what are your thoughts on as far as what they're doing, and how does that reflect the Steelers and their play come the 2024 season? Bob?
Well, I think it's interesting with the Bengals. Franchising T. Higgins was a surprise because you've got
Yeah.
Jamar Chase and you've got to pay him, and they just paid Joe Burrow last year. I mean, I think they're starting to feel the effects of that contract. I mean, it's great to have a top flight quarterback, and Burrow is any way you slice it, he's top five quarterback in the NFL, arguably top two. Depending on how much you hate the Kansas City Chiefs, you may even say he's the best. But they're starting
That
to
would be a
feel
lie.
they're starting to feel the effects. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting that they brought in Geno Stone. The Steelers were going after him, and they weakened the Ravens in the process. They basically redid the safety duo. They
Hmm.
brought back Von Bell, who used to play for them. I mean, that's a good, solid safety unit for the Bengals. You know, the rest of their moves, it's kind of surprising that they didn't go, a little bit harder in free agency. But I think franchising T. Higgins is really tying them up. They kind of brought in Sheldon Rankins to maybe boost the defensive line. 5 years ago, I think that's a great move. I don't know how much he really has left in the tank at this point. Replacing Joe Mixon with Zach Moss. I mean, Zach Moss certainly had a nice year in Indianapolis last year, but I don't think he's in the same ballpark as Joe Mixon. I mean, he's a decent receiver, so it'll be interesting to see. But Mixon, hands down, is better than him. And the other kind of intriguing because Hunter Henry was a real weapon for Joe Burrow. But last year they kind of moved on from it with Irv Smith, and that did not work out. Irv Smith is a tremendously physically talented receiver. He's just never been able to put it together in the NFL for the Vikings or the Bengals. And
Yeah.
now you bring in Mike Gesicki, who 2 years ago was a really good tight end. The Miami offense didn't, to me, he should have thrived a little more than he did, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I'm kind of torn with what they've done. I like the safeties, and the rest I think is just filler. What do you think, Leanne?
I think that I was surprised at the ranking signing because I think that's like he's a little bit past where I would have paid him quite that much money. I think it was like 2 years, $26 million. And I just think he's a little past his expiration date. I think they need to look at seriously boosting up that offensive line a little bit, and I'm assuming they're going to do that through the draft, because I expected them to do a little bit more in free agency and they didn't. But then it makes me wonder, like, how much do they feel like they've kind of run out of money, with the big Burrow signing and then some of the other things they've done so far, some of the other big names they have, and if they're, kind of waiting for the draft. Because like you, I was a little surprised they hadn't done more during the offseason so far. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. I know they'll be glad to have Burrow back, but they need to get Burrow protected. And, that offensive line was a struggle last year.
Bob, I have a question for you. So do you feel that by slapping the franchise tag on T. Higgins, now did Jamar Chase get his big contract?
Not yet, but
Okay.
I'm assuming being that they franchised Higgins, that Chase is the one they're trying to sign long term.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, it's gonna be, I believe it's gonna be a matter of who they let go first, Jamar Chase or T. Higgins. Granted,
I don't think there's any way in the world they let go Chase. Burrow would throw an absolute fit.
Yeah,
right.
that's his guy. That's his
Yeah.
guy.
Going back to the days of college at LSU, yes.
Right.
But T. Higgins to me, yes, he is so solid in my book. It was unfortunate that Tyler Boyd was the third wheel and he couldn't get into a good rhythm, whereas he could be contributing to the team. Joe Mixon is gone. I believe he went to Buffalo. I believe he went to Buffalo. And so, they got to rebuild the running back, the backfield. Leanne, I'm not too concerned about the Bengals on defense from a Steelers standpoint, because again, some way, somehow, the Steelers do find a way to beat them. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think the Bengals to me feel like one of those teams that do what they need to do immediately to win the Super Bowl, like this year. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like they're like a player or two away from a Super Bowl winning team with Burrow. And so I think that's, what they're constantly looking at is just replacing whoever was weak or bolstering a weak area and through offseason, through the draft. And that's what I feel like they're doing again. And I think in some ways, I think it's been detrimental to them. They aren't working on more of that long-term solution, franchise tagging T. Higgins. You can't keep everybody. Do you know what I mean? That's all football teams. It's not the Yankees, and you can't keep everybody. So, you have to find that balance, and the wheels kind of fall off the cart and they got to start over again.
Here's a quick question for both of you. When was the last time the Steelers used a franchise tag with anybody?
Ooh,
Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon Bell.
Bell. Yeah, I was gonna say Bell.
Going back to the Cincinnati defense for just a second, Ray. A current Steeler, Larry Ogunjobi, made a huge difference for them in their Super Bowl year. He really demonstrated how he was an outstanding run defender. He had a career high in sacks, I believe, was 7.5. They have missed him since he left, and their defensive line, DJ Reader, is a nice player, but Ogunjobi was so familiar with the AFC North. I don't feel like he's been a great replacement for him. And the record kind of shows it. And it's a little unfair because, yes, Burrow did get hurt this year, but I just don't think the Cincinnati defense is as good against the run. Luckily for them, hardly anybody runs in the rest of the league, but in the AFC North, Nick Chubb, assuming he's healthy, knock on wood, hopefully he is. He's a great player. We don't want to see him lose his career.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry, Jalen Warren, Najee Harris. I mean, the backs in the AFC North are stout, and I think Cincinnati has the worst run defense in the division. They're going to be hard to pass on, though, because those two safeties, I got to tell you, Geno Stone, I really feel like he's a rising star. I really wanted to see the Steelers get him. I'm not unhappy with Deshaun Elliott, but I think Geno Stone might have a little bit more of an upside.
Last time the Steelers used a franchise tag was Bud Dupree in 2020.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot about Bud.
And that worked out well. He had a great season under the franchise tag.
Yeah.
So he got, arguably you could say Bud getting hurt that year where we started 11-0. I know a lot of people get down on Ben and everything else, and teams kind of caught up to the passing game, but Bud Dupree and Devin Bush getting hurt. Not that Devin Bush was a world class guy, but that injury in 2020 really made a difference. I mean, we're going to talk about Bush later, but
Yeah.
I mean,
I think he was
Dupree,
so bad post his injury that people forget that he was good before it. Do you know what I mean? Like I think that's hard for people to remember. Like you said, I don't think he was, knocking anybody's socks off, but he was a really solid addition to the team before getting hurt.
and Bud Dupree and TJ were awesome. And, that's kind of
Yes.
the rise of Alex,
Mhm.
with that injury. It took Alex a little time to develop. He wasn't the player he is today
Yeah.
when he
Right.
replaced Bud Dupree. But he, I really felt in that they kind of got jerked around in the Ravens game, with them pushing and pushing and pushing, and that's where the game they had already lost Bush for the year. But when they lost
Yeah.
Bud on top of that,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the defense went from really good to the rest of the way.
Bob, you made a comment about the running backs in the AFC North. Think about this: Najee, Jalen Warren. You got Derrick Henry. You have Nick Chubb. All power backs, with the exception of Jalen Warren. You have all those power backs. Given that this is a passing league right now, do you think that the AFC North is trying to change its course and say, okay, we're coming back to smash mouth football?
I don't think change their course. I don't think the AFC North ever stopped playing that kind of football. They might be the only division that it's really important to be physical and run the football in. Part of it's the weather. I mean, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Baltimore. Not December. If you're visiting, you got a problem. I mean, the Chiefs did well in that AFC Championship game because I think they also play in conditions. I think I saw, this week some people talking about if you want to maximize Cleveland and Deshaun Watson's contract, they should put a dome on that stadium. Yeah. I mean, eventually somebody in the AFC North is going to have a dome, but it's really the last place where you can sort of play old school physical football, and I think the NFL loses something if that goes away.
I agree. I think that's a badge of honor for the AFC North. I think that that's something that the current team owners and players and coaches don't necessarily want to see. Do you know what I mean? It does give you a little bit of an advantage over, Las Vegas or something when they travel to play you in December and January. But I think it is like that badge of honor for some older NFL teams.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Guys, let's move to the Browns. The Cleveland Browns.
Cleveland Clowns.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever you want to call them.
The mistake by the lake, yes.
Yeah.
Guys, Nick Chubb, for the past couple of years, has been a thorn in the Steelers' side for quite some time. He has been a thorn. And, I keep looking at that Steelers-Browns game when Minka made that hit and knocked him out the game. Well, basically knocked him out for the season.
Out of the season.
Yeah, and some feel that
Maybe
it
his
was a
career.
dirty hit. No. But guys, what is it, in your opinion, what is the outlook on the Browns? Because, I think here pretty soon, given the fact that Deshaun Watson is back now as starting quarterback, Flacco is gone. I don't know who's
Jameis Winston's there.
What's that?
Jameis Winston's there.
James Winston is there. So, guys, Leanne, give me your opinion on Cleveland.
I think the Browns are really, really tough last year. This is not your Browns of yesteryear. You all like to make. I think they're telling putting the NFL, but especially the AFC North on notice that they need to be taken seriously. I was a little surprised about the move for Jerry Jeudy. You know, I'm an Alabama fan, and I still felt like Judy's stock was a little inflated for that. So I was a little bit surprised by that. I was also surprised that they let Flacco go. I felt like he did, you know, played well when he needed to, you know, but maybe they saw a little Mason Rudolph in him, like, you know, he had some luck, but he wouldn't be able to sustain it.
Bob?
I'm really surprised, you know, and Jameis, you know, I give a lot of credit to Jameis Winston. This is a guy who went #1 overall in the draft. You know, he's had his ups and downs in the NFL. I mean, first 30-30 guy, which isn't necessarily a great thing, but you know, he was really on track in New Orleans to look like he could take over for Drew Brees long term. And, you know, unfortunately, he got hurt. He is really, you know, when he left Tampa Bay, he humbled himself. He took a low paying contract to back up
Yep.
Drew Brees and learn, and then unfortunately got hurt when he got his opportunity. Now, you know, he's taken another lowish deal. I think he was looking at it as, you know, what Joe Flacco did with Deshaun Watson is here's my opportunity. But the Browns, being the Browns, went ahead and signed Tyler Huntley.
Yep.
So that, now you have a guy who's a former Pro Bowler. And he started on 4 games.
I mean, that's
making
relative.
Yeah. But you know, by all accounts, Huntley's a good quarterback. He's a guy
Yeah.
that, you know, Stephen A. Smith from ESPN lobbied hard for the Steelers to go get after Ben Roethlisberger retired. You know, there are some nice things to Huntley's game. I think signing Zadarius Smith or re-signing Zadarius Smith is a huge boost for them. Oh, let's face it, they were built on their defense.
Yeah.
Schwartz is still there. Zadarius Smith opposite Myles Garrett is a problem. You can't really double team either one of those guys. And, you know, they faded down the stretch. Myles Garrett, you know, basically did nothing the last 5 games of the year, should have never gotten Defensive Player of the Year over TJ, Micah. I mean, you could make all kinds of arguments. Bottom line is you can make up all the pass rush win rates, win stats you want, Pro Football Focus. He disappeared down the stretch during the playoff run when the Browns shockingly made the run behind Flacco. It wasn't because of Myles Garrett. I mean, as he does in many games, he just disappears when the competition elevates. You know, I also find interesting, I don't know that the Browns are convinced that Chubb is going to, at least early in the season, be all the way back. Bring in Deontay Foreman and Foreman and Nyheim Hines. That's a viable tandem that you know could do some damage. Foreman's a nice bruising back. He's a little long in the tooth, but you know if you only have to survive 4 or 5 games with him as your number one till Chubb gets back, then you know that could be interesting. But
I also think there's a question mark a little bit about Watson too. I mean, we really haven't seen a lot of him.
That's a great point.
The question is he washed up?
The question with Deshaun Watson, in my mind, is are they about to pull a Russell Wilson and just say, look, we got Jameis and Huntley on cheap deals, and we pulled a guy off the couch last year to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Are they just going to cut bait and say, you know, it's not one thing about that contract, though. It's not like Russell Wilson where, okay, yes, they ate $40 million and they basically destroyed 2 years of their salary cap over it.
Yeah.
Watson is fully guaranteed.
Every bit of it.
Sure is.
Yeah. If you cut it,
there's a lot.
There's no relief.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I do. I agree with you. I think that maybe they're looking at something like that and figuring since they have the other two for so little money, they're going to have to eat it either way, whether he stays or he doesn't. And so just eat it and get rid of him. So I think it'll be interesting to see how things pan out with him because, you know, they sold the farm to get him. And so far it hasn't proved to be a valuable asset to them.
Right.
Yeah. And I think if they think Jerry Jeudy is the answer, you know, all you got to do is call Pittsburgh and ask Russell Wilson what he thinks of Jerry Jeudy. I
Right.
think I made this point before. I think Russell Wilson caught a lot of flack for having two big, slow receivers on the
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
and it not being what he was used to. I'm interested to see who the other guy is going to be for the Steelers, coming up. But Pickens is a beast, and I think Wilson's really going to enjoy throwing to him. And I think if they, there are several really intriguing guys in the draft. If they bring them in as the number two,
Yeah.
One thing I don't think it'll ever happen because I can't see Cincinnati trading him to the Steelers. But if he really hits free agency next year, and let's face it, they're not going to franchise T. Higgins 2 years in a row because that gets him a 20% raise. He'll be getting paid almost as much as Burrow if they try to bring him back.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would really love to see T. Higgins and Arthur Smith's offense. I think if Arthur Smith was sat down with some play and could build his perfect receiver, T. Higgins might be that guy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Guys, moving on to the next team. Our most hated rival, the Ratbirds.
Most respected.
Yeah, the Ratbirds. Guys, the Ravens finished with the best record in the NFL last season, 13-3. They had the number one seed in the playoffs, and they fell short to the two-time, back-to-back world champions in the Kansas City Chiefs. Lamar Jackson, he's being Lamar Jackson. You got Mark Andrews, his safety plug. You have Zay Flowers, who was playing lights out. Of course, he did some dumb things in that playoff game. And now J.K. Robbins is gone, and now you add Derrick Henry. Guys, I will say this. In the words of Jerry Rice, when he came from San Fran and went to Oakland, he didn't know that the AFC was going to be like this, especially the AFC North, because see, now, it's the gauntlet. And Derrick Henry is going to find out what AFC North football is really like. It's smash mouth, week in, week out, day after day, play after play. Tell me, do you think it was a good move? Well, like you really care. Do you think it was a good move on Baltimore to sign Derrick Henry? And how do you think they will fare this coming season?
This kind of
Go ahead,
reminds
Bob.
me of, this kind of reminds me of what the Eagles did a few years ago when they assembled the greatest group of free agents in history and went out and were terrible.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry is a Hall of Fame back. I think he's got to get to 10,000 yards to get to the Hall of Fame, but I think he will. He only needs, I think it's less than 1,500 yards. I don't think he'll get them all this season. But it kind of smacks a little bit of desperation. Dobbins was a good back for the Ravens, but he couldn't stay on the field. He was always hurt. Henry is very durable.
Yes.
He's played smash mouth football for Vrabel in Tennessee, so I don't think it's a huge adjustment to the AFC North for him. I just don't know how much of an impact a 30-year-old running back, even if he is Derrick Henry, is going to have in this division. Baltimore is really feeling the effects of the Lamar Jackson contract because they waited so long. At least with Kansas City and Cincinnati with Burrow and Mahomes, they kind of had a 1-year adjustment period where they didn't have to pay full freight for these guys. Lamar Jackson, because they waited so long and the contract negotiation got so nasty, they kind of threw themselves into the Dallas Cowboys situation where Dak Prescott, first year in his new contract, got $75 million. So they, the emergence of Isaiah Likely while Andrews was hurt is interesting. Baltimore is kind of like the Steelers were. They don't typically make a huge splash in free agency, although they're more open to it. They're a very good team in the draft, but you look at they've lost guys. That's their
A lot.
story of their off season. Patrick Queen goes to the Steelers. You lose your backup quarterback to the Cleveland Browns. So now you got Josh Johnson, who, let's face it, San Francisco thought so much of him when Brock Purdy blew out his arm in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. They decided to go with Christian McCaffrey at quarterback after a few series.
Yeah.
So it's not, they've lost some guys. Re-signing Matabuke was a big deal for them. He led them in sacks last year. He's a good defensive player, but you sacrifice Queen,
Smart
you sacrifice
decision.
Stone, yeah, to re-sign him. And I think Steelers are going to really reap the benefits of Queen. I could see Baltimore really falling back. I mean, maybe, as much as 2 or 3 wins, especially considering the upcoming schedule.
I think that they lost a lot of players, and I think losing those many players is disruptive. Do you know what I mean? It almost doesn't matter necessarily who you replace them with. There's a curve there, and it's a disruption. They had a really good defense, and I do think that defense took a hit. I think it may not be the same defense this year that we saw last year. I agree with you. I love Derrick Henry. I cheer, for him, and glad he did well. I won't anymore, but I agree. I think he's 30 years old, so I don't know that he's got that impact that they're looking for any longer. Do you know what I mean? Unless they want to throw him out there as like a red herring to make people nervous and they double cover him or something like that. But I just don't see him having the big impact that he's had in the past on a consistent basis. I do still think he'll break off runs because he's just Derrick Henry, but I don't think it'll be as consistent as it once was.
When I think about Derrick Henry, I think of Jerome Bettis, where Baltimore is giving him a fresh new set of tires.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, I believe it's going to be another case of Jerome Bettis 2.0.
We got Jerome Bettis a lot earlier in his career than Derrick Henry.
But it was more of Bettis took the route of really smashed off, kind of Earl Campbell type. But Derrick Henry, to me, yes, Derrick Henry, if he comes off the edge there, that's when he's most dangerous, because he'll get that good running start. And if you don't get to him before he gets past the line of scrimmage, he's gone. He's gonna run somebody over.
Yeah.
So again, it's gonna be good. And I don't believe when they play the Steelers, I don't believe that they're gonna go towards TJ's side. They're not that damn crazy. I believe they're going to try the other side.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alex is just as effective against the run. I mean, TJ's all world. Alex is an excellent run defender. It really just depends on which side Cam Hayward lines up and how much of a step Keanu Benton takes. If it becomes a bookend situation where Cam and Larry Ogunjobi are rotating opposite Benton and he's getting 75-80% of the plays, Steelers are going to be hard to run on. If Cam Hayward and Ogunjobi are spending most of the time on the field, could be some issues in the run defense, especially if we don't get a thumper next to Patrick Queen.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, like I said, I mean, time will tell come draft time. And I know in the weeks leading up to the draft, we will discuss our picks, our predicted picks, who we think the Steelers are going to draft, and who they should get, as opposed to as far as the availability. So we'll have a wish list, and then we'll guess and see who they think they're going to draft. And
the Bengals have a lot of offensive line needs, so they're a team to watch out for on draft day as stealing picks that we need.
That's come up quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah,
watching out for them.
2 spots ahead of us. We got to get ahead of the Bengals to get certain people.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to switch gears here. This is something.
Actually, hold on 1 second, where I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
So now that we've talked about some of the moves, AFC North pre-free agency, because we know things are going to trade in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think these guys finish in the division? If you were going to predict 1 through 4 right now, who would you say is going to win it, come in second, third, and finish last?
Bob, you dirty dog, you. Uh, okay, I'll start with last. I'm going to say the Browns will finish last. Second, well, next will be, in third place, it will be, I'm gonna say the Bengals. In second place, the Ravens. Now,
So you got Steelers winning it.
Steelers
yes,
winning it.
yes.
Now, I mostly agree. I think the Steelers will win the division. I think that the Bengals will be in second. I think that the Browns will come next, and then the Ravens will be last. I think that they're going to struggle this year with all those changes. It's no hate against the Ravens. I think they put together phenomenal teams. Do you know what I mean? But I think they're going to struggle this year.
You know, and to add to that, Bob, to add to that, and we've talked about this ever since we've started this podcast, since Russell Wilson has signed. He has given the Steelers new life. It's not your typical, 5 to 7 step drop back and you stand in the pocket and wait for someone to get open to make a play. Now you have a running quarterback. Okay. On top of that, on the back burner, you have Justin Fields, who can run also. So the sky's the limit for the Steelers when it comes to quarterback, because again, Justin Fields coming out of Ohio State, he didn't look like a slouch. He was just in a bad system in Chicago, unfortunately for him.
Yeah.
So but maybe 2-3 years been wasted. These 2 years wasted. So I'm happy with the way the Steelers are going right now, because again, the quarterback play is very important. If you recall when Ben first started as quarterback, in his rookie season, when they went 15-1, went to the AFC Championship, keep in mind, Ben was running. It's one of those, 4 or 5 seconds, if no one's open, take off running. Put the defense back on their heels. Great, that's what we want to see. And in years past, Ben hasn't been doing that. He's been sitting back there, trying to make a play. And if the play really collapses, then he'll take off running. But he's gotten slower as he got older. Now we have 2 mobile quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So we're okay on that. Should we draft another quarterback? I think we should, just for insurance purposes. But if we don't get a good quarterback out of the draft, yes, fine. You can find a free agent quarterback off the street. Maybe
How high of a need do you rank that drafting a quarterback? Like, where would you like to see? What round would you like to see us draft one in?
Leanne, I'm going to say probably 5th round.
We don't have a 5th round pick, but so
Right.
it would be the 6th
So we can
round.
take the quarterback.
Yeah. Okay. So and I'm what I'm saying in the later rounds. But
Right, later rounds.
okay,
I
so
got you.
okay, so we don't have a 5th round pick, so we say 6th round pick. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe 6th round, maybe pick number 199. We had that luck,
These points are interesting, but one thing Las Vegas, after we signed Russell Wilson, moved us from dead last in the division to dead last in the division.
Right.
Smart money always, they always are something you should take into account. Where Vegas was wrong, and it was one of the safest bets ever last year, and I think it's a safe bet again this year. Not that anybody should go out and gamble on what we're saying here, but I sure am going to. The Steelers haven't finished last in the AFC Central or North since 1988.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen again this year, folks. It's not. I think Cleveland will get more out of Watson this year, but I still think they'll finish last in the division. Why? Because they're the Browns. They make the playoffs. as every 4 years, like the Olympics. Well, not even every 4 years. They made it in 2020. They made it in 2023. The likelihood is they step back. I think the Ravens are going to struggle. I do think they'll figure out a way to, finish. They're a Lamar Jackson away from being last, but I think Jackson stays mostly healthy, and they manage to figure out a way to beat the Browns. The Steelers can testify that if you're going to try to win on defense, it can work, but you got to have the quarterback to play to match it, to at least give you a fighting chance. I don't think they have that with Watson. I think he just continues to demonstrate why they should have never signed him to that contract. Bengals with Burrow will finish second, but I don't think they're as dangerous a Super Bowl contender as they were. So yeah, I think the Steelers will win the division. I think there's an excellent chance we get to 11 wins. And in the AFC North this year, I see everybody hovering right around 500, 8 or 11-6. 11-6 wins it.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think I said this last year when we were, predicted to come last in the division, and all the media guys were saying, well, this AFC North is just so good. Like, if you don't put them last, then who are you going to put last? Because you got this great Browns team and this great Bengals team and this great Ravens team. And you look at them like that individually. And I think that people forget how well the Steelers always play in their own division. Do you know what I mean? So that is such a huge boost for us, as it was last year when we were predicted to be last. And I think that people forget that for whatever reason. It's just the familiarity, having their number, whatever it is. The Steelers tend to play really well in the division.
And Ray, don't sell short the new third string quarterback. Kyle Allen is,
Yeah.
for all the Mason Rudolph love that he gets, especially from Mark Caboli, Kyle Allen has played 19 games as a starter to Rudolph's 13. Rudolph would have to average 300 yards a game and 2 touchdowns to pass Kyle Allen's 19 starts in his next 6 starts. I don't think that's going to happen. So Allen is a third string quarterback. He's still under 30.
Yes.
He's a nice little under the radar signing from Omar Khan.
I think he's a good one. Yeah, I like him.
Yeah.
Guys, we come to the final part of our episode today. Something that has we've been kind of thinking about talking about this. Well, of course, it's interesting. And here's the question I ask viewers, and please share your thoughts. Give me your opinion on this right here. Email us at 6steelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's
Or
SIX.
throw it in chat.
Or in the chat, yeah. SIXCITY. I'm sorry, SIXSTEELCITYRINGS@yahoo.com. You'll see it on the bottom of the screen at the end of the show. Who are the most feared defensive Steelers in history, in your opinion? Leanne, I want you to go first.
Oh, I got to say Jack Lambert. I just don't know how you'd say anybody but Jack Lambert. And I think that that's like a very narrow margin. I think there's so many phenomenal Steelers, but he just absolutely, you say Steel Curtain, and he's the first thing you think of. You think of that crazy 70s group and that tough defense, and you think of Lambert with the sweat running off his face and his teeth and that photo. And I just don't know how you can say anybody but him.
Bob?
Oh, I get the second pick. So if you're familiar with Pro Football Talk, this is our 2-round draft, like they do with Florio and Sims. So I'll take the guy who is arguably the scariest man ever to put on a football uniform, and that's Greg Lloyd. Lloyd is quintessential feared intimidation. He stepped on, there were times where the opponents were defeated just by him stepping on the field. He has a rap a little bit as a dirty player. I mean, I think that's all in the eye of the beholder, kind of like Hines Ward, kind of like Rodney Harrison. Guys are dirty if they play for the other team. Guys are not dirty if they play for your team.
Also,
Lloyd-
different generation of players. You know what I mean? People forget that when they're looking at it through their lens of 2024, the rules were different.
Yeah. And I live in Jacksonville. I've been in Jacksonville for a long time, and I used to love it when the Steelers were in the division because I got to go see them every year. And Frank Frangie down here, who's a big radio host, has been in the city for 30 years, is from Pittsburgh, huge Pirates fan. He's now the play-by-play guy for the Jaguars, and I remember distinctly in the last division game him coming on the radio and saying, "Hey, Steelers, Jaguars, the atmosphere in the Jacksonville Stadium." Um, I forget the name of the Jacksonville kicker. He missed a kick at the last second, a 50-yarder, and the Steelers won after Ben brought him back. He said, "Hey, we should have, 8 Steelers versus Jaguars in Pittsburgh every year and 8 neutral site games at Jacksonville." If you're not familiar with Florida, folks, the largest Steeler fan club in the United States outside of Pittsburgh is in Jacksonville, Florida.
Jacksonville.
That we love the Steelers here. So
Really?
even though the Jaguars,
Yeah.
a lot of people,
I didn't know that.
a Jaguar Steeler game,
Mhm.
you can expect a regular season game to be at least 25,000 Steeler fans strong.
I will say Florida in general has a lot of Steeler fans. I'm in South Florida, and I was not expecting the number of Steeler fans I would see here, but I all the time have people stop me and ask me, if I'm a Steelers fan, they'll see me wearing a shirt or something like that. Are you from Pittsburgh? And, you just see so many people, especially during football season, out in their Steelers jerseys. And yeah, I didn't expect that.
That's crazy. That's interesting.
People from Pittsburgh got to retire somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
I know Houston has a huge Steeler fan base also.
So
And
Ray, you're up. You get picks 3 and 4. You're lucky.
Yeah.
I get picks 3 and 4. I was number 3 most feared. I will have to say Debo.
Good pick.
Debo,
Good pick.
because again, Debo was once interviewed and he said, "I wanted to hurt people. I wanted to feel it when I hit them. I wanted to feel it." And so the biggest hit, I believe, it was Massaquoi from the Cleveland Browns. Was it a dirty hit? No, it was, to me, it was clean, but given the fact that Massaquoi, kind of went down, so it looked kind of nasty. But James Harrison, he brought the pain, and he's most feared also.
I think Massaquoi might.
Hmm?
Yeah, I was going to say I think Massaquoi is his most popular one that people remember, but I think the Colt McCoy hit was way bigger. I mean, he destroyed Colt McCoy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another pick.
Yep.
Back to back.
4.
Back to back, I'm going to have to say, from the University of Southern California, Troy Polamalu.
Ooh, interesting.
Simply
That's
because
interesting.
Troy, to me, was that chameleon. He changes on you. I mean, you just never know. And again, you see him over here, then you see him over there. I mean, he just was all over the field. And again, that one play in the goal line, Kerry Collins was a quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, and Troy timed it just right, jumped over the line and tackled Kerry Collins for a sack for loss of yards. You can't beat that. Again, some people say that Ed Reed is the best safety ever. No. Troy Polamalu is.
Yeah. Silent assassin.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been a nicer, I mean, by all accounts, couldn't have been, it might be the nicest guy to ever show up on a most feared list.
Right.
Yeah. Truly. I met him. I was blown away at how incredibly easy to talk to he was, how very personable he was, and stood and talked to me for quite a while. He was a really nice guy. When you were talking about James Harrison and those tough hits, you made me think of Ike Taylor was talking the other day on his podcast about that defense he was on, he was talking about the rule change with the hip drop tackle and how, these rules change, and how he was playing, they changed that targeting rule and, said you couldn't hit him up in the head area anymore. And he said, so we just said, all right, yeah, we'll just start taking out ACLs. And he was like, and I know they changed that targeting rule. He's like, because we were putting people to sleep. He said, that was like our badge of honor. He said, we wanted that more than we wanted an interception, was having somebody be out
Yes.
cold. That was like our badge of honor. And I was like, I remember that well. And I love that. What can you say?
Yeah.
Well, I've got the next one, right?
Yes.
Oh, did you go first, Leanne, or?
No, I went second.
No.
You went first. No, I went first. You're right. You go.
Okay, so that's good. I get to pick the guy who I loved growing up, Joe Green.
Yeah.
You can't have a most feared list without Mean Joe Green. Green is one of the, I met him once. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet off the field.
Yeah.
Longtime NFL defensive line coach after he retired. He kind of got the reputation early in his career for things he did on the practice field, for things he did in games. Literally, if you ever get a chance, look up Joe Green and the Cleveland Browns and watch the fight where he takes on two Browns.
The whole
at the same
defense.
time. Yeah. It's amazing. He has, according to Roethlisberger, one of the reasons when he said, hey, there's two guys who could, even at 75 years old, could come out and play a down or two of NFL football. And he said Joe Green's hands were so strong that he could come out and literally just grab a guy and plug a hole for a play or two, even still. A lot of people don't know Joe Green. When the Steelers were moving on from Chuck Noll, and when it was clear they had negotiated the deal after the purge of '88, Joe Green really wanted to be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he asked Merrill Hodge.
Yeah.
Hodge talked about this in an interview. He asked Merrill Hodge to lobby on his behalf to Dan Rooney. And Hodge, the story goes, that went into Dan Rooney and said, hey, look, I know Chuck Noll's moving on. Would you consider Joe as the coach? And remember, Joe is the guy who brokered the peace between Noll and Rooney and made it where Noll could retire. And Dan Rooney told Hodge that, look, I love Joe Green. I could never hire him as the coach because everything he did, good or bad, would be compared to Chuck Noll, and he'd never be his own man. If Joe wants to coach, he's going to have to do it somewhere else because, and bear in mind that, this is the Rooneys we're talking about. It's not, there was the aspect of him saying, hey, look, I'm concerned about what would happen if I put Joe Green in the coach role. Was it a mistake? We don't get Bill Cowher. We get Joe Green. Who knows what would have happened? But all these years later, I wonder, because Hodge tells it that he wanted the job, I wonder what Joe Green would say, how he felt looking back, whether he felt his life would have been, how it would have been different, or how the Steelers' legacy would have been different if he had taken that job.
I did read somewhere that he said that he recognized that he didn't have the what, I don't know, an experience like running a whole entire team. Do you know what I mean? He said I heard he was not happy he didn't get selected, but then as time passed and he clarity on it, he realized that, although he had coached, he never coached a whole entire team and all of the minutia that goes into that. You know what I mean? It's more than just calling the plays or overseeing the people. And so, I don't know if that was his way of, just making it nice because he stayed such a huge member of the Steelers family.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's face it, he coached the Dolphins forever. Dolphins defense longer than he did with the Steelers.
Yes. Yes. Oh, this last one is a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
This is a tough one. I got to go with Rod Woodson. I hate saying it because he left. So I want to be mad at him, but he really was incredible. I think, as far as somebody being feared, I think he's one of the only players to come back from an ACL injury in the same season at that time, at least. And I think there was something to be said for how tough he was, just how fierce he was, and just what an aggressive guy he was tackling. He was always everywhere. He was always disrupting things. Even if he wasn't making the tackle, he was causing chaos on whatever side of the field. And I think, a lot like, like a TJ Watt or somebody today, the teams really had to plan for Rod. And he was the best part of watching football in some seasons where the Steelers weren't so great.
Yeah, all due respect to anybody watching, if you think Deion Sanders is the best cornerback who
Yeah.
ever played, I'm sorry. He's the best cover cornerback I ever saw. He's one of the best return men I ever saw. But I'm sorry, I'm a Steeler fan. You give me Rod Woodson and Mel Blount, and Deion's a distant third as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
Whoa.
I agree.
Okay.
I think Deion gets a lot of it, Deion gets a lot of attention because of all the flash, do you know what I mean? And how noisy and vocal he is. I think, he brings attention to himself. And so not that he wasn't a phenomenal playmaker, but I think, Mel Blount, I think Rod Woodson were quieter guys who weren't necessarily drawing so much attention to themselves, also in a different era, both of them, than Deion, you know what I mean? So with less visibility.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Woodson and Deion kind of overlapped a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, but the thing I hold against Deion, for those who are like, oh, how could you say he's third? The term business decision about tackling is not a word that should come out of a defensive player's mouth. And the fact that he was open and almost braggadocious about the fact that he wouldn't stick his head in there on running plays, I'm sorry, that's not a football player to me. As far as a return man goes, I think he's better than Devin Hester. I acknowledge Deion's great, but let's face it. He's magic punt returner, magic kick returner. If you drop back to pass, you didn't throw it his way.
Right.
But if I'm playing against Deion, what side is he lined up on?
Right. Run the ball. Yeah. Yeah. You got to be willing to put your face in the fan.
Well, that's what Deion would do. But hey, he has a gold jacket, so credit to him.
Yeah. So does Mel Blount and Rod Woodson.
One other cornerback.
Deion wants to have levels to the Hall of Fame. He can take one step down and look up at those two.
I love it.
One other person you got to give flowers to, that's Darryl Green. That's another person.
Yeah.
And TJ Watt, we'd be remiss not to bring Watt up. Do you know what I mean? And our kids will be talking about how incredible Watt was. Do you know what I mean? In a decade or two. And so I think you're, remiss not to say him, but there's so many. Steelers have been known for such great defenses for such a long time. It's very hard to narrow it down to just 6 players.
Yeah, it is.
And I've had this argument on social media a few times about TJ. TJ is one of the best pass rushers I've ever seen. He's good at dropping in coverage. He's an all-around great player. But bottom line is, if you're going to be a Steeler all-time defender, you got to get a ring, or at least get a playoff win. And I think TJ's been very open about this year.
Yes,
and I'm really, really excited to see what he does. About how I'm frustrated. I can't consider myself he's open to learn from people who've won playoff games. I think he knows. Look, if you want to be James Harrison, if you want to be or topple Jack Lambert and Joe Green or Palomalu at the top, you gotta win a playoff game. And I've told people on social media this. I love TJ. I think he's great. He's the best pass rusher in Steelers history. But until he wins a playoff game and wins a ring, I'm sorry, he's not the top 3 or 4 for me.
But that's going to be, and that's hard. That's got to be so hard for him because it's really none of it is his fault. Do you know what I mean? It's not like there's anything TJ could necessarily do to be more TJ to make that happen. The guy's
Yeah.
out there, killing himself every week. I mean, works harder than anybody, takes excellent care of himself. So can you always improve? Sure. But I don't think that you can easily look at what he does and say, well, we would have made the playoffs or we would have won a Super Bowl, if you had done this, this, and this. He's pointing the finger solidly at the offense, and he would never.
Today is April 4th, 2024. You heard it from here first. TJ Watt will get the sack record this coming season. He will get it.
The all-time sack record.
He's
not getting 100 sacks.
Yeah,
he's gonna play with a
that's a
vengeance
lot.
because he's gonna break straight hands record. He's gonna break it because he's playing with a vengeance because he got screwed out of the Defensive Player of the Year award. So he is going for that. You heard it from here.
Yeah, I mean, it could certainly happen. What was it? Leanne McAfee and him had a bet last year. He broke it. They were going to give some huge amount to charity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, DJ certainly could. I mean, he's a phenomenal. I mean, health is a big part of it. 23.5 is we say break straight hands record. I think we would be remiss in saying he would be breaking his own record.
Right. I was going to say.
Yeah.
It's his record, right?
It is.
Yeah. Well, they share it.
Yeah. Share it.
What's funny is, and if you really think about it, the NFL, he sacked Huntley in that last game. He should have the record outright. And for those of you who don't remember that Michael Strahan setting the 23.5 sacks, Brett Favre fell down and let him get it.
Yeah.
Admits
Sure did.
he did it to let him get it.
He sure did.
So NFL, do the right thing. Go back and look at the Huntley sack again and give TJ the title outright because he deserves it.
Yeah.
That falls on
wasn't
the
part of the
Sports
script.
Bureau. You know that? That falls on the LA Sports Bureau to make that change. Not the NFL.
Well,
Guys,
tell them to.
Yes.
Tell them all.
Guys, hey, another episode of the books. Again, we're getting closer to draft day. Guys, I enjoyed this talk here. But before we go, Bob, what should you do?
Like, share, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. We appreciate it.
Leanne?
Like, share, and subscribe. Shoot us an email, message us and ask us a question. Tell a friend. We appreciate it.
All right. And you can also email us at 6steelcityrings@yahoo.com. That's SIXSTEELCITYRINGS@yahoo.com. Look down the bottom of the screen. Guys, Leanne, Bob, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Ray.
We'll be back next
Thanks,
week
Ray.
to talk some more Steelers talk. Take care.